Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns Creatures series of comedy, fantasy novels, and short stories. With me is Sam West, and this is going to be our second installment of Sam's DM advice, in which he is ostensibly instructing me on how to be a dungeon master.
Yeah.
That's probably never going to happen, so in reality, he's instructing you.
Yeah, Bob is the surrogate for the audience.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Mm-hmm. So today we're talking about encounter building, and encounter building is a fickle little process that has a bunch of there's so many factors that are out of your control as a DM, especially when you're playing in a game that's built on a variance system that's being modified by 1s and 2s, but the range is 1 to 20, right? Like most of the time, whenever you're rolling for CR, like not even CR, weak creatures, the die matters more than anything else does. A level 1 character can get crit killed by a goblin accidentally. And that could just happen. The party goes in, going to fight the brigands, and the goblin goes, yeah! And it hits it with their scimitar attack, and it crits, and it rolls 2 6s, and now the wizard is dead. And you're like, oops. So take it. This is all to say, like, the best way to get better at encounter building is practice, and you're gonna make mistakes, and the game is not gonna necessarily help you sometimes. And there's a lot of nuance that goes into it, but there are some big takeaways that I think are important for, I want to build my first encounter. I want to, build future encounters. I want to have, dungeons full of monster fights that aren't tedious and boring. How do you do that? Here, this is what this video is going to be for. It's for constructing those kinds of things quickly and easily and efficiently, not wasting your time.
All right. Well, let's get into it.
Great. Step 1 of every single encounter that you will ever prep. This is the most important step, and there are a lot of good answers to this question that I'm about to ask. Is you have to be able to answer this question: what is this encounter for? A good answer to this question is it lets the players show off what they've got. So there will be plenty of tables that are heavy roleplay sessions. Not even heavy roleplay tables, just like they've been shopping for 2 hours. They've been, doing a lot of social stuff. They've had a lot of characters have opportunities to, break into this, heist style mission, and there hasn't been any fighting going on. A lot of characters have tons of abilities on their sheet that only work whenever initiative has been rolled, that only have the ability to, like, well, I have this thing that lets me hit harder, and I spent character options on it, invested into this with my character build. I can't use it unless we have a fight. So having a fight to let them show that off is a good reason to have a fight. Now, expanding beyond that might be, okay, why are we having this counter within the broader scope of play, of the story that we're telling? So if we're in a heist, this fight might be happening because someone tripped an alarm. This fight might be happening because somebody, was robbing the place at the same time. You might have other different reasons for why an encounter breaks out, for why you might suddenly have a need to do some kind of confrontation here.
We need guard uniforms.
Sure. All of that can be a reason to start a fight. That will inform a lot of your encounter building. It will inform how fast the encounter should be. It will inform what your end objective with the fight should end up looking like. So, for example, if we're in an encounter where, like we positioned earlier, you're stealing some guard uniforms and you're caught in the act, and the guards, go to confront you, that's not really a kill or be killed scenario, and the objective isn't to kill the guards. The objective is to get out with the clothing intact, right? So that encounter is going to feel very different to the set piece dragon in its throne on its giant hoard of treasure breathing fire at you while you're trying to slay it, right? That's a very different kind of encounter with different stakes, different objectives, right? And I think having a clear objective then is the next easy place to go. Why are they in this fight, and what will they get out of this fight from doing it one way, shape, or form? I think a lot of fights in D&D 5th edition are crap because they are kill or be killed against random jank that's being thrown against the players with zero tactical thought behind its vacant eyes. They are the ankegs that refuse to burrow. They are the goblins that refuse to retreat. These are monsters that are sent into a meat grinder and die. That's what they do. Now, there are good monsters for that. That's not to say that it can be a bad encounter, but you will benefit a lot as a DM from having an idea as to what the end goal of this encounter is, and then the monsters that you populate those encounters with will contribute to that feeling that you're looking for. So in the case of the guards, I would probably have guards that are looking to escape and alert more so than fight and kill, right? I would look to have there be a couple people trying to hold them up, trying to capture the players, and maybe one other one's running away, and the party has to figure out how they stop the person from running away while not being restrained and dealing with these guards in a non-lethal fashion. It might not be an encounter where brute force violence and fire fireballs are viable. It might be an encounter where grappling becomes suddenly a lot more viable, something you actually want to do. It might be the kind of encounter where your objective isn't to hurt anybody, but it's to escape yourselves and use different tools and have a little bit more of a dynamic environment for it. So again, big step one process. Know why you're having the fight, know why the encounter exists, and then you can sort of scope tools to that.
Okay, so know why you're having the fight, both in terms of plot or story wise, and in terms of the giving something the player something fun to do and show off their skills.
This ties back into lesson 1, all about making sure everyone's having a good time at the table. Some people are there to kill monsters. Having encounters to let that happen is important.
So, would you recommend then, like tailoring the encounters to the party?
Yes.
Okay.
This is honestly the hardest part of encounter building, and it's not even close. Tailoring what monsters you're throwing at your players is going to be very, very difficult because the monsters you're given to work with aren't exactly, I think varied is the word I'll use. Most monsters in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition that you have to pit against players do one thing and one thing well, and it's take the attack action. And after that, it's how they get on top of you and sort of what senses they have that differentiate a lot of weak early tier monsters. Goblins, I think, are a unique exception because they get this cool little bonus action that helps them hide and disengage and like scurry about. But most fights are going to be, oh, that's a wolf. It attacks sometimes with advantage. Oh, that's a kobold. It attacks sometimes with advantage. Oh, that's an ogre. It attacks. Oh, that's an orc. It attacks. So how you frame monsters that all are based attacking against complex groups that have varying tactics of their own can be a bit tricky. It can be a little bit daunting to tailor encounters to specific player groups. But there are some tips that I can bring up here that will hopefully help you along your way of being like, well, we got a rogue, we got a cleric. What should I be? How should I differ making an encounter for these, 5 martial characters versus these 5 caster characters?
But then I wonder if you're tailoring it and predicting what you think the characters are going to do, does that not take away like some of their, I won't say opportunity to be creative, but like take away the necessity for them to be more creative?
Not even a little bit.
No.
So yeah, there isn't. Tailored encounters serve a very, like, their objective is to challenge the players, right? An encounter that is often going to be satisfying for everyone is one that is going to be close. Yeah. Or, like, one that contributes to the tension of an environment, right? There can be plenty of encounters that are cakewalk, the players breeze through, that they beat the monsters, they feel like badasses. That can be a valuable element of the game. But it also, like, a really good, tight, like, I call them set piece encounters, these finales of an adventure. You want it to be close. You don't want a monster to just get bowled over, right? So for that reason, how you tailor it is both to have encounters that are tailored to show off the player's strengths and have encounters that are showing off the player weaknesses, right? Tailoring isn't just a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. It's within the context of the encounters you've run and what encounters you plan to run, how can you present varied challenge and variance for your players to, using the tools they have, succeed? An example that I think is really easy and quick to point to is masses of enemies. So if I'm DMing and we're looking at like mid tiers, level 5+, I can expect my martial characters have extra attack, my rogues hit pretty hard against one target. And my casters, my spellcasters, my wizards, my sorcerers, my warlocks, less so warlocks, but those kinds of characters, druids even to some degree, they're going to have better tools for handling lots of small things. So Fireball comes online is the big thing that sort of is alerted to a lot of people at 5th level. And that deals with large amounts of creatures. If I'm tailoring an encounter to newly 5th level characters, and I have a wizard in the group that I know took Fireball, I am going to throw 8 extra monsters at them that are all in the encounter to highlight how cool Fireball can be. They're being thrown in there to give the player an opportunity to go, oh, this is going to be sweet, and deal with all of those enemies and feel like a badass for doing so. At the same time, I'm going to have moderate hit point creatures that won't be in the groups or will be in the groups, take the hit, and be able to keep going. That will give the martial characters with extra attack some ability to show up there too, to be like, oh, we just got these new features, I can attack twice in a turn now, I can take more hits from this thing, I'm going to attack with my greatsword a bunch of times, it's going to soak the hits, it's going to be fine. Now, if I'm playing with no full casters, if I know they don't have great access to area effect damage, that mob of monsters suddenly kills somebody, right? 8 extra actions, this is a really big topic we'll cover in a second, is debilitating, even if the things have 5 HP each. So, like, how you structure those kinds of encounters is going to vary based off of what you know the players have accessible to them, what you know the players are going to be able to do. You can throw more variance and more variety of specific things at them by having an understanding of what they're capable of. And you can learn to challenge that in different ways and create environments where they need to solve the area effect damage problem, but they can't use the spells they already have because they're ineffective, like fire resistance or fire immunity. That can be a way to challenge characters that have been leaning on fireball too much. You can create environments to sort of cultivate the player's skill sets that let other elements of the party sort of highlight and show off in a unique and interesting and fun way, encounter to encounter.
All right.
Another, go for it.
I was just gonna say, all right, you got your spellcasters. They've got their fireballs. They've gotten a couple of chances to use them. What?
Sometimes you want to make sure you know what spells are on their sheet, because if you throw 30 methods at a party that doesn't have any area of effect damage, you go oops, and then the breath weapons kill everybody because there's they can kill at least 6 around, and that's not enough.
Yeah.
Anyway, continue.
Yeah. So knowing that, do you sometimes throw like you said, expose their weaknesses?
Yes.
Throw 6 ogres that are coming from different directions.
Yes. That is exactly what you do. You figure out ways to say the party have these tools. They are going to be less effective in some environments. Easy ways to challenge things like fireball, get monsters that get up inside the party's face, right? And not just like at the behind the paladin, because if they can get on the other side of it, fireball now damages friends, and smart monsters that know what they're up against can interact like this. So there's another thing to consider about for encounter building is how smart are your monsters? What are their tactics? This is a giant element of play that is hard to learn how to do, but monster tactics are a way to take debilitating. Can you still hear?
Yeah. No, you're fine.
Okay, sorry. Sorry,
right.
everybody. Zoom let me know something went wrong for some reason, but it's fine. So it's a way, like tactics is a way to take monsters that have low lethality and all of a sudden jack them up. Like there's this thing called Tucker's Kobold. It's pretty well established. Really simple little monsters that can be lethal whenever they're playing to their strength, when they're using the efficient tactics and skirmishing like crazy, not letting the party see them, attacking them with traps, attacking them from long distances. You can take the more tactically you play your monsters, the more lethal they are, and the more dumb, big zombie run at party and get smashed by meat grinder you run them, the faster they fall, regardless of what their actual stat block says. There's a lot of complexity in actually running monsters, but we're trying to focus on building here, so we'll focus on
all right.
Encounter structure, right? That seems reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay. Another thing that I think is really important, we haven't really touched on, like how you go from, oh, well, I have these players, how do I tailor, how do I do X, Y, or Z? Before we even tailor, minimum, how do I make an encounter, right? That seems like a pretty easy question to answer, right?
Yeah.
So I think the easiest place to start whenever you're building an encounter, once you understand your objective, and the most common objective is kill or be killed, the most common objective is we go in a room, there's full of monsters that are trying to eat us, we're going to kill the monsters that are trying to eat us. Balancing that encounter now is the next step. And the king of balance in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is action economy. How many actions does their team have? How many actions does your team have? Right? It's just the fundamentals of what makes this game tick, especially in the low tiers. If you want an encounter to be challenging, simply having more enemy actions than the party does will make that encounter more challenging. You can look to CR as a sort of guideline as to say, like, oh, CR 1/2 and quarter, you can run multiples of those for level 1 parties, right? If you run 8 CR 1/8 creatures, they're going to kill somebody if they fight tactically. They are going to, if they have the equal round spread as the players do, and target things, again, like I said, using their brain, the party's going to get demolished because one person goes down and there is no mercy, they're murdered. Another player goes down, no mercy, they're murdered. And the action economy snowballs really fast. Making sure that if you're running in an encounter, you want it to be close to balanced, having a little bit, especially early on, having fewer actions on the enemy side to let players figure out how their character sheets work is a great place to start. And then slowly ramping up the difficulty by adding in extra actions. That can include extra bonus actions, right? If the players are using their bonus actions and the enemies aren't, the party has an action advantage. They are using more net things on their turns than the monsters are. So giving monsters bonus actions to use, like goblins, the disengage and hide thing that we talked about earlier. Giving more weight and more availability of things like layer actions. That's a really core mechanic of this game that I recommend running on lower tier bosses. If you want one single big bad, it needs more actions or it's going to get ripped to shreds and no one's going to take damage. And you're going to be like, I can't believe this thing was CR6. So like, action balance is probably the most important tool to get a grasp on. And again, I recommend running a little bit lower actions out the gate than the other way around, just so players can have some time to feel up how their characters play, what they're supposed to do in combat, gets used for what spells are good on their sheets, what aren't, that kind of thing.
All right. I had a question about that, but I forgot.
Want to dive into challenge rating real quick?
Challenge rating? Yeah, I think, or what I was going to ask had to do with that, but go ahead.
Okay. Challenge rating is bad. I'm going to rip that band-aid off right now. Challenge rating is loose groupings of monsters by their supposed difficulty, but it misses a large ways and elements of the game. Like, I think the summon spells highlight this pretty concisely as to how this is kind of crap. So like pixies are something you can summon 8 of because they're CR1/4. Pixies have a robust, absurd list of spells that includes uses of polymorph and things. And if you were to pair them against other things of their relative CR, it's not close. The Pixies will body anything in their path because they've got a billion spells and a whole bunch of powerful things they're able to do. Likewise,
All right, not to nitpick, kind of to nitpick, but I think there's an important distinction. You're talking about the conjure spells, not the summon.
I am talking about the conjure spells. Yes, that's accurate. Yes, they are the ones that summon based off CR. My apologies. Giant owls are the conjure animals. Or one that's like, oh, these things have absurd fly speeds, are high strength, have good chunks of hit points, and they can pick things up. Oh, that's a problem. Like that's not even close to the same CR as this. And if the moment tactics start to come in, all of a sudden CR really falls apart, right? Tactical owls, like birds of prey, aren't in range of melee attacks. Period. They are just swooping in, dive bombing. The moment they take a hit, they're gone. They're not fighting to the death. They're out of there, right? They are going to do hit and run, rest kind of mentalities. They're going to try and pick things up, fly them up in the air, and drop them like real birds of prey do, right? That's just basic beast tactics. If you're ever playing a giant owl and it flies in and starts clawing things and standing there and dying, yeah, it's going to get trounced by the players. And this is where CR really, again, you start to see a lot of holes in it. You'll see a CR 1/8 monster with 5 hit points, and you'll see a CR 1/8 monster with 22 hit points. This range isn't that useful. What is useful that you can take away from CR is general groupings. You could expect a CR 1/8 creature on average to have lower hit points, lower to hit, lower damage than the higher CR counterparts. And that can be, if you're like throwing something together quickly, that can be a useful starting place. If you're looking for ways to sort of tailor and build encounters for specific players of specific levels, CR 1 and lower generally is where your level 1 through 3 is. Level 1 is really volatile, so be careful there. And as you progress, you can kind of use the guideline of the CR is kind of equivalent to 4 of the players of that level. So 1 CR3 monster challenges 4 third level characters. Kind of. I found that that's not really a valid or useful way to measure it, though, and instead I tend to fall back to the actions. And more importantly, and this is the really big crux of it, and this is the part that a lot of people don't want to do, and I understand why, it's knowing your player's average damage output and knowing how much health your players on average have. That information will be a lot more useful in tailoring and building encounters than CR ever can be.
All right, what I'm getting from this right now is that, last time we talked about you can do a lot of this on the fly. This sounds like there's a lot of planning that has to go into building encounters.
Not necessarily. I think, for example, average damage is something that is the kind of prep you can do. You can also will quickly get a feel for level 1 characters probably output around this much damage. That damage is normally a D6 plus 3, maybe a D8 plus 3, right? If you're in weaker groups, you can expect it to be a weapon attack. And that's something that you can pretty easily calculate pretty quickly, right? And then you can look at things like encounters will be a little bit destabilized. They'll probably do a little bit higher damage on average than that because they have their abilities. They'll give them bonus damages here or there. They'll have their spells. They give them 1 round of bonus damage here or there, right? You can expect to maybe juice that number up a little bit. But for the most part, you're looking at, okay, D8 plus 3, D8 averages to 3.5, 6.5 damage. So I know I could expect a player at a level 1 table to probably be able to deal out 6 damage a round, like as an average. That's what I could expect to happen. So if I want a monster to live more than a round, it needs more than 6 hit points, right? If I have a bunch of giant centipedes, they're expected to die in a round because they have lower amounts of hit points. And that starts to give you a lot of inclinations of, okay, even if I don't necessarily know which monsters I should run, I know about how much HP they should have. And then you don't even necessarily need the monster stat blocks. At that point, you're pretty much golden. You can call whatever you want, give it the right amount of HP, which is enough to take 2 or 3 hits. And now you're off to the races with anything you need to be in his improvisational state, right? If I know that my players can deal an average of 10 damage a round per character, and I want an encounter to last 7-8 rounds, I need a lot of hit points on my monsters to be able to contest that. I need a lot of and I also need to make sure that they're not dropping the player. So if I know my party has a total hit point pool of, just adding it all together, like 50, and I can drop it in different ways, and I have to hit their ACs and stuff like that, it's quick and easy to just go, okay, this thing needs to deal 5 damage a round to be able to challenge them reasonably with this many actions. And that's just a numbers game. And then you can plug whatever monster shells you want on top of it, but using those numbers is a pretty quick and easy way to help your improv skills, help your quick planning, and is a genuine way to do encounter prep that I would recommend doing. Doing it at first takes a lot of effort. Doing it later, it becomes second nature. You just start to know around how much damage you should be using. You start to know around how much HP things are going to need to have, especially in the early tiers. And once you get to the upper tiers, you can start throwing swaths of hit points at things, and encounter balance gets very, very, very wacky, because in levels 1 through 5, it's pretty measured as to what characters have access to. Past 6th, it will range crazily wide table to table as far as what players are able to do, what players can be expected to handle. If you're walking with level 17 monk versus level 17 wizard, those are just like wildly different games you're playing at that point. And that's where encounter balance starts to be like, okay, now what magic items do they have to challenge these hit point things? How can this character function in this encounter while the wizard is doing their things? How can I help this character that's a bear totem barbarian feel cool while the 11th level characters are like actually dealing with threats and putting out good damage over very distances and handling spellcasters and that kind of stuff? Upper level encounter building is a whole separate video that is honestly really messy, but for the low tier stuff, there really are you know how much damage your party can deal, you know how much your party is expected to take, and you build encounters that are aimed at challenging equal to that amount or less than that amount over multiple encounters.
Okay. I think I remember what I wanted to ask you before. You mentioned earlier, like, no matter how well you plan this, things don't, dice are a thing, and there could be wildly different outcomes.
Mhm.
The encounter is going awry one way or the other. Are you one
Yeah.
to fudge the numbers?
Me? So the short answer is I roll in the open. So no.
Oh.
However,
Well,
if
I
you're
meant like, all right, no, what I meant more like not fudge the die roll numbers. I meant like the actual hit points the creatures have or whatnot, or whether there's more hiding in the back room that come out.
the latter,
Thinking,
yes. The prior, no.
yeah.
Generally speaking.
Thinking like Pulp Fiction, they shoot everyone in the room, but there's a guy with the gun in the bathroom.
Mhm. So this is, I think, a really important topic that gets a lot of people up in arms, and it's hard to talk about fudging and like encounter balance on the fly is basically what it comes down to, right? It's the quickly adapting to a changing ecosystem based off of random crits and that kind of thing, right? I tend to say the better tool for leveraging that is tactics. Give your monsters reasons to want to leave. Give your monsters reasons to want to fight to the death. Give your monsters reasons to take different actions. Give them reasons to be prone to making irrational choices. So like gnolls, I think, are a great example. If I've got gnolls, the tactic right thing to do is kill an unconscious player. It just is. It removes their ability to take actions full force, and if there's like an up cleric or something and they can see there's a spellcaster that can heal, they need to kill it or it's going to come back and continue to kill them. Instead, saying gnolls don't find any joy in killing the dead, they'd rather just keep killing the living, gives you real plausible deniability for a gnoll trampling over with it smells more living things, gets a really excited grin on its face. That's a way to fudge the encounter to make someone that would otherwise certainly die have a second chance, that because, maybe something crit that wasn't supposed to, and this thing wasn't supposed to necessarily kill it, but did. Now it has a reasonable shot of coming back up. Now you have a reasonable amount of fallback on that. Now, they're going to be encounters where, oh crap, this thing got crit into the floor. Everyone's got to abandon them. How can we salvage that? Improv. Figuring out neat things on the fly is going to vary encounter to encounter. I am not above throwing in more monsters as an encounter is getting bulldozed over. In the scenario where I've made it clear ahead of time that this is a densely populated area, if they're going to fight kobolds in a kobold war, and you best believe there are reinforcements. You best believe that if it encounters that are going south, there will be more kobolds, and if a kobold retreats, there will be even more kobolds. I don't have a fixed number in there. I'm looking to give the players the feeling of confronting endless waves of kobolds in their warren. I'm looking to give the players the satisfaction of mowing through these kinds of monsters. Zombie hordes is another really easy place to say, I'm sending in more zombies, because they are designed to die. Zombies well, it's not entirely true. They have a really crap feature that makes them really obnoxious to track, but zombies are great fodder monsters. Just let players shine, kill a bunch of things, feel good about killing a bunch of things, and sending more of them at them can keep the encounter stakes higher, while a necromancer, while another powerful enemy, is dueling with the spellcasters, is having a climactic escape plan sort of flesh out. These are all ways that you can, as long as, and again, you prep the players ahead of time to expect these kinds of things to occur, you can integrate really seamlessly into your games that add a lot of element of suspense. I think the difference between a really great DM and a good DM is someone that is good at letting players know ahead of time, here are my contingencies, disguised as, there's more things here. There's more plot about. There are things that you aren't aware of. There are secret traps and runes, and there's, you can see some of these things going off. Maybe there's a teleportation glyph about, and that's how you get your big bad out if things go really south and you need them to stay alive. You can seed these kinds of ideas prior to encounters. Now, doing that is the exact antithesis of improv, right? That's a lot of prep and mindful thought, and I'm not good at that. But it's a thing that good DMs can cultivate as a skill and will help you a lot to make encounters feel fair, even if you're putting your finger on the scale one way or another to sort of increase the drama of the event.
All right.
Encounter building is hard, is the takeaway from this. But if you leave this with anything, I also want to quickly mention the encounter objectives should be more than just kill or be killed. I love defend the hill kind of missions. I love the players given the opportunity to just send monsters at them designed to die in a hit, and then the players can kill lots of them while holding a space that's for a minute for a spellcaster, or defending a cavalry wagon as it's being ambushed by goblins. They're not gonna fight infinitely, and they know their window to go through this path is pretty narrow, but you will get a lot of rounds of arrow barrages coming down and goblins swinging in and trying to capture people and stuff. Having encounters that aren't just fight to the death are really, really fun. They also require more work and thought and investment to set up. So maybe we'll talk about non-killer be killed encounters one day on this channel. Who knows?
Yeah, we might talk about that very soon. All right. Well, does that wrap us up for this episode?
Sure. I know it's a lot of work, but DMs out there, learn the average player damage that you're working with. If your players don't take fireball, know that. Knowing what your players can do helps you build encounters naturally. So take that into consideration. It also shows you what they want to be doing. So that's a really important element that is hard to ignore. It's hard to make really tailored and feel good encounters if players' cheats aren't being taken into account for.
All right. Well, thank you, Sam, and thank you everyone for joining us. We had a lot of good comments in response to our last episode of this segment. I hope to see more of the same in this one. So, yeah, let us know what you think.
Any questions for me as well? You can leave them in the comments.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's that. Thank you again, and like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.